guys, it's Maddie. Welcome back to my channel, and if you're new here, then welcome. Today I will be doing my summer wrap-up. It really feels so weird to be filming right now because I have not filmed any videos in a month. And I also haven't been uploading in a month, which I am so sorry for being absent. I do have a whole story on why I took a break from YouTube and BookTube that I'll be talking about in another video, which is actually going to be a tag video that I just found, and it's all about returning back to BookTube, and that will be coming out next week. So next week for Tag Tuesday, I'll be explaining why I left. So we'll save that story for that video. Before we get into my summer wrap-up, I do have a few things that I want to say, so just bear with me for a little bit. First thing, my hair was brown. I just dyed it. Second thing is that you may notice I'm not wearing any makeup. I spent last week with my mom, and I left my makeup bag in her car, which I'm super sad about because I'm like, don't know when I'm going to see her again. I don't know when I'm going to get my makeup back. So for the next few weeks, or for however long it takes me to get my makeup bag back again, I'm going to be on here with no makeup, which does make me feel uncomfortable, but it's out of my hands. I have no makeup to put on, so we're just gonna deal with the bare face for now, and basically no makeup November has come early for me. And lastly, I do want to say, if you are new to my channel and you enjoy this video, be sure to subscribe and click that bell icon next to the subscribe button so that you don't miss any more content from me. So now let's get into my summer wrap-up. So if you're not familiar how I do these videos, first I tell you all the books that I read in summer, which is all the books I've read for the months of June, July, and August. And then at the end of the video, I tell you the top 5 books that I read this summer and go more in depth on my thoughts about those particular books. So let's just get into it. Starting with June, I read Infinity by Jess Accardo, which I gave 5 stars. Then I read Omega, the second book in the Infinity series, and I gave that 4 stars. And then I read the third book in this trilogy, Alpha, and I gave that 4 stars. Next, I read Frigid by Jennifer L. Armentrout, and I gave that 4 stars. And the last book I read in June was The Savior's Champion by Jenna Moreci, and I gave this one 5 stars. Next, going into July, I read a ton of books this month, so we have a lot to go through. The first one I read is The Unexpected Everything by Morgan Matson, and I gave that 4 stars. The Wicked Deep by Shay Earnshaw, and I gave that 4 stars. Scorched by Jennifer L. Armentrout, the second book in the Frigid series, and I gave that 5 stars. Beautiful Disaster by Jamie McGuire, and I gave that 1 star. A Quiet Kind of Thunder by Sarah Bernard, I gave that 4 stars. Demon by Jennifer L. Armentrout, and I gave that 4 stars. Half-Blood by Jennifer L. Armentrout, I gave that 4 stars. Obsidian by Jennifer L. Armentrout, which I gave 5 stars. A lot of JLA books were read in a row. Milk and Honey by Ruby Kaur, and I gave this 3 stars. Milk and Vine, who I can't remember the authors of, and I didn't write it down, but I gave it 2 stars. Onyx by Jennifer L. Armentrout, the second book in the Lux series, I give this one 4 stars. Before Tomorrow by Pintup Dunn, which I gave 5 stars. Love Comes in 3, which I gave 5 stars. Goodnight Moon, which I gave 3 stars. And Tempting the Best Man by Jennifer L. Armentrout, which I gave 4 stars. And then lastly, in August, I read 3 books that month. Not a great month, but the first one I read was Tempting the Player by Jennifer L. Armentrout, which is the second book to Tempting the Best Man, and I gave that 3 stars. My lowest rated JLA book as of yet, which is kind of sad. Next is A Living Nightmare by Darren Shan, and I gave that 4 stars. And lastly, I read The Vampire's Assistant, the second book in the Circuit of Freak series, and I gave that one 5 stars. So those are all the books I read this summer. Next, the exciting part, I will be telling you the top 5 books that I read this summer. I have a good group of great books that I read this summer that I'm excited to share, so let's just get into it. So these will be in order from least favorite to most favorite. Of course, they're all great books, but I like doing them in order to build the anticipation to the number 1. So coming in 5th place is Frigid by Jennifer L. Armentrout. This is a new adult contemporary book, and this was actually the first new adult book I had ever read from Jennifer L. Armentrout. So I really didn't know what to expect going into it, but I was really pleased on how it turned out. This book follows the friends to lovers trope, which is one of my favorite romance tropes of all time. And it's about these two friends who get stranded in a cabin and are snowed in, so they can't get out, so they're stuck there, and they are going through kind of a rough patch at the moment, so it's not the best situation for them to be in, but since they're alone together, some feelings start to come to light, and it's just a really good romance book that I really enjoyed. The only thing that bothered me about it is that the miscommunications trope is in it toward the end, and that is one of my biggest pet peeves when it comes to romance books, is the miscommunication trope. So that was disappointing, but everything else I loved. I loved the relationship that developed in this book. I loved the characters. However, I liked the second book in this series a lot more, and I'll get into that a little later on in this list. But yeah, this one was good, and if you're into new adult and you love Jennifer L. Armentrout as much as I do, then I would really recommend it. Coming in at number 4 is Alpha by Jess Accardo. This is the third book in the Infinity Division series. I have been following this series since the very beginning, so I was super sad when it finally had to come to a close because I really enjoyed this series, but the last book was not disappointing. I think it wrapped up so well. If you're not familiar with this series, this is a trilogy that takes place in this world where dual dimensions exist. So each book tackles on the topic of dual dimensions. There are people from other dimensions coming to the dimension that the main characters are in. It's just a really cool series that I always recommend because it's so underrated, because it's just so good, and I really enjoyed the last book in the series. Coming in at number 3 is a book that came out this year, and that is The Wicked Deep by Shay Earnshaw. I had been wanting to read this book since it was released, so I knew I had to get my hands on it right away, and I really enjoyed it. This is one I gave a 4 out of 5 stars, and I was thinking it was going to be a 5 out of 5 stars, but I did have problems getting into it in the beginning. I felt like the first half of the book was very generic of a YA book, but then the plot twist comes, and that's when I really got sucked into the story because it got so much more interesting. So had that plot twist not been there, this book wouldn't even be on my top 5, but it was so good. I really love the romance that went on into it. The romance is part of like the plot twist, so it just got so much more intriguing. And I'm sure if you have been on BookTube or in the book community in general, you have heard about this book. It is about this town where every June, every summer, these 3 sisters who were accused of being witches and were drowned in this town's lake come back to life and take on the form of teenage girls who live in the town. And what they do to get the revenge on the town for killing them is that they lure boys to the water and drown them. So it's a very dark book, but it is so interesting, so captivating. The atmosphere in this book is the best part about it. You can really visualize this town, which is really spooky. I really think it is the best book to read during the fall time, so if you haven't read it yet, now is the great time to do it because fall is here, and I'd recommend you read this book during this season. Coming in at number 2 is Scorched by Jennifer L. Armentrout, which I mentioned is the second book in the Frigid duology. This is a companion book to Frigid, so it follows a different character. In this book, we follow the main character in Frigid, best friend, and I gotta say, she was a little more interesting than the main character in the first book. I really loved her story. I loved following her point of view. What really surprised me about Scorched is that it's a lot darker than Frigid is. Frigid was a very light book. It wasn't the lightest and fluffiest romance book I've ever read, but compared to Scorched, Scorched is so much more darker. It takes on a lot of more hard-hitting topics that I wasn't expecting. The main character in Scorched goes through a lot of problems. She has a lot of issues that were kind of hard to read about, but still I enjoyed reading about her struggles. It made her all that more real, and I felt like the romance in this book was even better than the one in Frigid. Whereas Frigid follows a friends to lovers romance, Scorch follows a hate to love romance, which that trope I love even more than the friends to lovers trope, so I was all for the romance in this one. It was really good. It really did the trope really well. And whereas I gave the first book 4 stars, this one was a 5 stars. I loved it so much. It made me cry. It just gave me all the feel, and I would definitely read it again. And finally, coming in first place should be no surprise if you have been watching my videos lately, because I've expressed my love for this book so many times, but that is The Savior's Champion by Jenna Moreci. Going into this book, I didn't expect to love it as much as I did, but boy, did I love this book. This is a 500-page book, I think a little more than that. I read this book in a day and a half. Usually with a 500 book, it would take me maybe a week or more to read it, but I flew through this book because I could not put it down. It was so good. I think the reason why I really couldn't put it down is because the pacing was so on point. Never in this book did I feel bored, did I feel like the story dragged. I constantly wanted to know what was going to happen next. And it's very rare for me to read books in one sitting, or at least read books that quickly. So if I can read a book that fast, that proves that the pacing is really good. Not only that, but the story was amazing. I loved the main character, Tobias. He's a character who is very edgy, but he is also such like a sweet being that has such a great heart. So I really loved following his character. And there's so many characters in this book that are just so amazing, and you just need to read it if you haven't yet. This is a self-published book, which really makes me want to support more self-published authors, because it really proves that there are some great self-published authors out there that I need to read. I need to get on that because this one was just amazing, and of course I would reread it again, which I'm going to at some point before I get to the sequel, which will be coming out next year, that I cannot wait for. So those were the top 5 books that I read this summer. All great books that I would highly recommend you read if you haven't yet. And with that said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. And if you did, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe down below for more bookish related videos. Also be sure to follow me on my social media where I post bookish things outside of BookTube. I have not posted on my Twitter, on my Instagram in a month since I've taken a break from BookTube, but I'm going to get back on that really soon. And I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye!